Hello everybody, I wanted to use this video to quickly highlight some of the changes that have been made to the JBC quote entry dashboard located in the John Brooks Company dashboards folder. The first change that has been made is to this first widget. It now shows quotes by month, and it's hard-coded for this year. So it gives you a little bit of more clarity than what it used to show, which you may remember was the by week. So that can grow and get pretty ugly and pretty data rich in a non-clear way as we move through the year. So I think this gives you a little bit more clarity that way. And I guess it was also redundant because, and this is moving on to the next change, you actually had the exact same widget down here, so showing you that monthly revenue and monthly quote volume. But one of the changes that's been made has been adding a trend line to the volume of this particular widget. Now it's important to note that this trend line is only trending the data set shown in the widget. So it's not, for example, this is looking at this year. So this isn't our trend line looking back from 2 years of data, for example. This is just looking at this year's trend based on, starting in January and going to where we are now. And of course, that time period can be adjusted by manipulating this quote sent date filter. So that actually takes us to the next changes, which is a little bit of a reorganization in these filters, but also the addition of some more. So while it looks a little bit busier, I think it actually provides a little bit more value, and I'll give you some examples of that. So first of all, I've added a pipeline field. So if you did want to look at a specific pipeline of a rep, you can now do that. I've also added a revenue field. So if you wanted to look at a specific revenue range, you're able to do that. Finally, I've added a state province one, and while this one's a little bit messier, it I think can provide some regional data. So for example, when we talk about activity in the West, our people do a pretty good job of marking the province. So for example, we could select Alberta and British Columbia as an example. And that's going to cascade through. So now what we're getting is not just a team-specific situation by province. We're actually getting a company-specific view by province. So is it, and then you can dig in deeper by the team, for example. So is it that we've slowed down or sped up in a certain division, or have we picked up sort of based on the economy? And of course, to get back to where you started, you can simply go back to viewing the default, and that's going to cascade through. The final change is a pop-up dashboard, and you'll see a button for it in the top right-hand corner here. And this is a little bit new, but it's a different strategy that we're going to be following with some of the modifications coming. And it's going to be more of an on-demand situation. But basically, you click the button, you're going to get a pop-up of just two very focused dashboards. But the cool thing is that it's going to bring the filters over from the main dashboard, and it's going to bring them over, in fact, as you've set them. So if you've set, for example, a team, that's going to cascade through immediately as you do this. So what's an example of what we can do with this data? Or excuse me, before we get there, let me just highlight again for clarity what exactly it is we're looking at. The top, we're looking at the number of quotes by month. The bottom is the quoted dollars by month. And this is looking at basically now a 3-year comparison. So we're looking at 2 years ago, last year, and this year, all in the same place with a monthly comparison. So now to a use case. This is good, I think, for anything related to activity levels. So as an example, one of the things that we've been talking about over the last number of months is how our day-to-day business has sort of slowed down. And I think our day-to-day business is more indicative of maybe parts. So how could we use this to maybe validate that hypothesis? What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select a filter in product services, and I'm going to select only parts and replacement equipment, because I think that's the most indicative of the business that's coming in on the day-to-day basis. And let's just see what happens and see if there's anything that the data says. So if we were to look at just the volume at the top here, and even just look at the last few months, what we're going to see is for July, 2 years ago, there were over 2,000 quotes. Last year, 1,800, this year 1,600. And then we can work backwards to see, well, does that trend continue? Here we have 1,800, last year 1,900, and a very similar value 2 years ago, May. So I think you see where I'm going with this, but this is a way to actually, I think really validate that. If you also want to isolate to a specific year, you can just hover your mouse over top of one of these colors and it's going to isolate so that you can just get a clearer picture in case you're getting a little lost with the colors. But I think along the same vein here with that particular hypothesis, I think what it would also tell us is maybe the dollar value of the quotes. So are the dollar values of the quotes rising or dropping? Well, in this case, because we've set the filter, it doesn't really matter because now the volume is going to be indicative of the filter, and this should be proportional, which it is, right? So we had more quotes for a higher dollar value, less quotes for a lower dollar value. We might maybe be interested in the average dollar value to maybe further validate that, which isn't shown here. But if we wanted to take that even a step further and talk a little bit about, for example, regionality, you have that state province filter here. If you wanted to look at products, you have your teams here. So we can really get granular with just this one pop-up dashboard. And as soon as we're done, we just click off of it and it takes us right back to where we started. So just as a summary, we've got quotes by month now up here. We've got a trend line with quotes by week. We've got a variety of different filters available to us to get more granular with the data and use it more effectively. And finally, we've got a pop-up dashboard showing us a 2-year comparison of both quote volume and quote revenue with all of the available filters available to us at our fingertips.